Welcome to Dr. Grimmy's Old Time Medicine Show and Conversation Extravaganza. Step right up, ladies and gentlemen, and any others. If you have something that ails you, a problem, a challenge, a struggle, we have the cure. Are you bored, disdainful, thoughtful, maudlin, frustrated, or constipated? We have the cure that you have been waiting for. Myself, world-famous Dr. Grimmy, and my faithful and erstwhile assistant, Jake the Snake Garn, Cosmic Serpent, master of hidden wisdom, and owner of copious amounts of inner light. We will teach you, you will learn, and you will be happy. And so, my fine ladies and gentlemen, and others, please step right up. All you have to do is listen. We will sell you the right snake oil. It will cure what ails you, and if nothing ails you, it'll cure that too. We will teach you the secrets of the ages and the esotericness of esoteric. So enter with us now into the inner circle of sacred wisdom. Here you will find what you're looking for. Welcome to another Dr. Grimmy Old Time Medicine Show and Conversation Extravaganza. We're going to have a fun show tonight. We're going to talk about something kind of esoteric and off the wall. We're going to talk about crystal skulls, skulls that are made of crystal. And we're going to talk about some of the folklore about that and maybe tip some sacred cows. Science has a way of doing that when we come into this sort of field of inquiry. But we'll try to, we'll see what happens. Rabbit holes are fun. The rabbits I met in this rabbit hole were rather friendly. Wasn't too complicated or controversial. But then again, we shall see. Right out of the gate, we have a caller before I even got started. So let's see. Let me push some buttons here. We'll push that button. Push that button. Push that button. Hello, caller. How are you? And they hung up on me. All that button pushing for nothing. So let's get going. So this whole crystal skull thing. If you don't know about the story of the crystal skulls, you probably saw the movie Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skulls, which kind of borrowed some of the mythos a little bit on the idea of crystal skulls and went on high and right in my mind. I was really disappointed in that movie. I thought it was an excellent end to a franchise because if you can't keep getting it right, don't do it anymore. And I think they lost their minds doing that one. So the story of the crystal skulls is an interesting one, and it goes way back. Some argue that it goes way back into the Mayan period of history, which would have probably been around 500 AD, 900 AD, thereabouts, give or take. High Maya period is what archaeologists call it, because of the artistic and governmental control that the Mayan civilization seemed to exert in the world of southern Mexico and northern Central America. But the most common, the crystal skull that everyone talks about is the Mitchell Hedges skull. This is the one that has been gone around and on tour as a mystical crystal skull, believing to have occult powers of various types. One of the arguments is that it is one of 13 skulls. There's no historical evidence for that. We're going to talk about some historical evidence. I don't want to put the frosting on the cake too soon, but we'll see. The occult view of the crystal skulls, and this is crystal skulls in general. I found a whole nother rabbit hole in the occult view of crystal skulls. Mitchell Hedges, the finder of this particular of the skull that's the most famous of them, and when you think crystal skull, that's the one you tend to are thinking of. He called that it was the embodiment of all evil. He wrote that in his biography, Danger is My Ally. He was an adventurer, went around, came to America, made some money in the stock market just before the crash, and went back to England with a bunch of money in his pocket. and became an adventurer. He went around and adventured. Basically, he traveled to places, excavated. He was, I suppose, in that day and age, a well-funded grave robber. He generally had rich girlfriends that paid a good chunk of the money for his adventures. He was a fisherman, would catch giant fish, where they were always bigger than they probably were, but he did catch some big fish. He has some photos that are pretty spectacular. He says he doesn't mention in his biography, he says, I cannot tell you how I acquired the skull, but he states in his autobiography, Danger is My Ally, what a great title, that he found it while doing excavations in a site in what is now Belize, and in those days it was called British Honduras, and in a location called Lumbantoon. I don't know if that was the original name of the location, because it means pile of rocks or pile of cut stones, and which is pretty much what it is. And that may have been just how it got described, and when they started talking about it, it became Lumbantoon. But he stated that he found it in 1924, but that's about all he says. He doesn't talk about it after he comes back to England from those excavations. He spent a total of 7 years going to Belize and trundling around the jungle looking for lost city and treasure. There are some things that go along with this crystal skull that got promoted as part of the story of the skull. The idea that if you looked into its eyes, you would die. It also had that if you laughed at it, you would die. There are individuals who claim that they were able to communicate with the skull by looking at it. I don't know how they avoided dying, but they were able to see images in the skull. That the quartz skull, this crystal skull, one individual claims it's much like a computer disk that it opens dimensional doors and allows you to have information from the past, present, and future. And because it's made of crystal, crystal used in computers and electronics, so they kind of make that connection. That individuals have seen images within this skull, holograms they call them, of the past, present, and future. The owner of this crystal, well, after Mr. Hedges died, F.A. Mitchell Hedges passed away, his daughter, Anna Mitchell Hedges, took ownership and kind of wanted to sell it. Her father was her provider, and when he passed away, he didn't have a lot to provide, so she was trying to figure out how she was going to make a few bucks. She did state that if you looked in the eyeball of one of the skulls, you could see the future. Another individual states that he had communicated with the skull, that it told him his words. And he goes on to talk about that he has some, I would say, high and right thinking. And I like to talk about esoteric things and give fair credit to interesting stories. I am by training a folklorist, so it doesn't matter whether the story is true, just as long as it's interesting. He makes the claim, this individual, his name was Drunlano Melchizedek. I don't know if that's his actual name or his stage name or what, but he stated that the original purpose of the Knights Templar was to protect Christians from the Druids, and then later became protectors of Christians in the Holy Land. I don't know how he makes that connection. I'm familiar with the Templars and some of their early history, and I can't imagine how that would have come out of any of the history. But be that as it may, that's just me. Prove me wrong. 801-254-1640. That part of the reason we have these skulls, that they were protection during having ascension, or that you would be protected while you were crossing over into this greater wisdom, and that you needed to ask the masters in the skull to help you. It very much sounds like a sort of religious icon in the sense. He's stating that you should pray to the whatever's in the skull. Not an uncommon behavior in human. Not an uncommon behavior in human practice to give items meaning, bigger meaning, more than they normally would have. So Mr. F.A. Mitchell Hedges finds this skull, or states that he finds this skull in his autobiography. He doesn't say how it came into his possession, but he says he found it in Belize, in Lumbantoon, a Mayan city, an unexcavated Mayan city in that area. The idea was that if it was an actual Mayan artifact, the Mayan artifacts were kind of the rage at the time, and that when I say the rage, is everybody was interested in them. Whenever there was an artifact or an article about Mayan artifacts or exhibitions of Mayan artifacts, people were very fascinated with that, and it was a thing, kind of like the NBA today. That such an artifact would have made a major splash, but since he doesn't mention it, there's nothing said about it in any of the excavations that were performed from more official individuals in dealing with crystal skulls. F.A. Mitchell Hedges says in his efforts in Lumbantoon that he had discovered a new tribe. He believed, and his argument was that when Atlantis had gone under the ocean, that individuals from Atlantis had escaped and made their way to South America. And one of the things he was doing as part of his explorations was to find artifacts that would validate that view. And he later made that claim. Looking for a lost Mayan city, great mounds of stone in the jungle, Lumbantoon. Now his daughter, Anna Mitchell Hedges, states later that she found the skull on her birthday, her 17th birthday in 1924, and then a Maya elder shows up just after that event and tells the tale of the age of the skull, that her father called it the skull of doom after hearing this story. The story says she stated that she gave the skull to the Maya people, but the Mayan people there gave it back. He does, like I said, he doesn't make any mention of finding the skull until his autobiography in 1954. Anna, his daughter, his adopted daughter, interesting story there, inherited the skull, and she put it in the custody of a guy by the name of Frank Dorland. He was a kind of a P.T. Barnum guy with a little more dignity. He would sell artifacts of various types to various people and try to make some money off them. And so she, post-death of her father, F.A. Mitchell Hughes, Frederick Hughes, he tries to sell it. He puts it on display. He basically convinces her that the real money to be made is in touring this skull and kind of giving it an esoteric sort of presentation, that it's mysterious, that using kind of the P.T. Barnum approach to artifacts. And she really wanted to sell the skull, and she didn't want any less than 50,000 American dollars, which in that period of time, in the early 60s, was a pretty significant amount of money. She stated that it was the only artifact that they kept from those excavations, even though there's no other artifacts or catalogs of any excavations that F.A. Mitchell Hughes that he excavated. We're going to come back and continue the story of crystal skulls. He has a couple of friends. We'll talk about them after the break.
When the weather's hot outside, cool off with a splash of K-Talk Media, 1640 AM. Oh yeah, now that's refreshing.
Hey Dave, let's tune into the Simply Senior radio show on K-Talk this Saturday. It's at 2 p.m. and it actually sounds really interesting and maybe we can learn something.
I love you, Barb, but I think I'll pass. Besides, it sounds more like geezer radio. I bet it's all about soft foods and spray-on hair. How old do you think I am?
Okay, Dave, let me ask you in a different way. Do you want to listen to a radio show for people who are smarter, wiser, and have more life experiences than everyone else? Yes or no?
On second thought, I'm in.
If you want to join us for the Simply Senior radio show, tune into K-Talk at 1640 a.m. every Saturday from 2 to 3 p.m. See you there, slugger.
The Simply Senior Radio Show is a radio program for those people who are a little bit smarter, a little bit wiser, and have a ton more experience than anyone else.
I just saved hundreds of dollars by switching to Geico. I feel like I'm on top of the world.
Disclaimer, you will not be transported to the top of the world. In the unlikely event you find yourself at the Arctic Circle, seek shelter from the elements immediately to avoid frostbite and or hypothermia. Geico will not be responsible if you find yourself in a cave or crevasse with a lonely, abominable snowman, who in all likelihood will force you to play games including but not limited to Go Fish, charades, Chinese checkers, or his personal favorite, Red Rover, send Yeti on over. Geico is not liable for any damages, either physical or emotional.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more.
If you're a small business, first impressions can make all the difference. With Grasshopper, you get all the features of a professional business phone system on your mobile phone. Choose a business phone number, make calls, and send texts. Stay connected and work from anywhere with features like Wi-Fi calling and our desktop app. Set up your account in minutes with no long-term contracts and 24/7 customer support. Make your small business big. Now get $20 off your first month when you visit grasshopper.com/radio. That's grasshopper.com/radio.
The essence of sales is transferring enthusiasm to the customer. K-Talk Media is looking for people who have an unabashed enthusiasm for live local radio and who would love to share the message of our station with businesses who would like to tap into our large, loyal audience. Do you want a fun, energetic, and rewarding position with a company that makes a difference? Then join our team and feel the love. Full, part-time, or anytime positions available with great compensation. Call us today, 801-253-4883, 801-253-4883, or go to ktalkmedia.com and shoot us a message.
Welcome back to the Dr. Grimmy Old Time Medicine Show and Conversation Extravaganza. We're talking about interesting things tonight. We're talking about the crystal skulls. And we're going to, they kind of spread out a little bit. There's more than one. Talking a bit about the history. Before we get on, I'm expecting a call from next week's guest, Dwayne Erickson. We're going to talk about some more Book of Mormon geography. Dwayne has a theory on that. Those of you who are familiar with some of that thinking in Mormonism, Mormonology, if you will, would understand that there's a lot of speculation on the locations and places and of the text, the Book of Mormon text, and they want to historize those descriptions and connect them with actual places, kind of like biblical archaeology has done. And so there's been a lot of theories, a lot of arguments, a lot of discussions. And he, in the 80s, Mr. Erickson presented the idea that the geography of the Book of Mormon is best explained by a Great Lakes model. Now, there have been others in the community of that discuss those sort of things that are now running with that, claiming it as their own. Unfortunately, he came up with it first. And they've kind of stole, in an academic setting, in a pure academic setting, what you would call what these individuals have done is plagiarism. But because it's more just a religious view, it doesn't apparently, nobody holds them accountable for that sort of thing. But we're going to have Dwayne on next week. We're going to have him call in and kind of give us a quick preview what he wants to talk about. But that's going to be next week. I think it's going to be interesting, just because it is. I mean, we talk about things here that don't get talked about much, and prove him wrong. Give him a call next week here in the Dr. Grimmy Show. So back to the crystal skulls. Now I want to step back a little bit. There's actually 3 crystal skulls that are kind of in orbit of each other. And the reason they have some close connection is because they were all found around the same time. They all pop up out of the woodwork in the early part of the century, or the early part of the late part of the 19th century and the early part of the 20th century. And the names and faces of the individuals involved, the suspects, end up being the usual suspects because they have their fingerprints on all of the skulls. We find a skull in the British Museum that's claimed to be a Mayan skull that was purchased by the British Museum from a dealer by the name of Mr. Goban, or Boban, a French guy who was not an archaeologist. He was a grave robber extraordinaire, and he would collect artifacts from South America, bring them to Europe, and sell them to individuals who were collectors and creators of private museums. And he would also manage to get money out of, he managed to sell a crystal skull to the British Museum. Another museum shows up in Paris, in the Museum of Man. Again, this is also in the late 1890s. It shows up in the Paris Museum, about the same size as the skull in the British Museum. If the British got it, the French got it, and they would quote each other. Well, of course it's true. The French have one, and the French do the same thing. Of course it's a real skull. It's a real crystal skull. The Brits have one in their museum. You find that in esoteric circles is that the believers tend to quote each other. They tend to circular citation. Well, Bob said it, and Bob's over there saying, well, you said it, and so it must be true. I don't know. I keep an open mind, but I don't want my brains to drain out with my mind being so open. And then we have this F.A. Mitchell Hedges skull that shows up. This is the most prominent one, and it becomes the most prominent one in the 60s. Anna Mitchell Hedges, who's the owner of the skull, puts it in the custody of a Mr. Dorland, an art dealer who specializes in selling artifacts and art to museums and collectors. And he decides and he convinces Anna that the best way to make some money off this skull isn't, because we're not going to really get the money you want from it, but if we kind of give it a mythos and we sell it as a bit of an occult object, then we can do tours with it and make money that way. And that's what she did throughout the 60s. And prior to the skull being returned to Anna, this crystal skull, the F.A. Mitchell Hedges skull, was taken to the Quartz Crystal Laboratory. Who would have known that they had one? But apparently in those days, the late 60s, quartz and computers and that sort of thing were just getting off the launch pad. And so they had a lab that was studying quartz and quartz crystals and how they operated and how you could use them effectively. And so Mr. Dorland got the Hedges skull to the Hewlett-Packard Quartz Crystal Laboratory, and they did some testing on it. And their fundamental statement on their report was that, one, this skull was so finely made that it could not be made by the current period, when it was said that it was found by Mayan technology. It would have taken, several generations of working on the skull using hand tools to create it and bring it to the high quality and look that it had. They verified that it was completely a full quartz skull. Of all the crystal skulls, that was the one that got the first dose of science applied to it. one of the things that came out of that is one thing you cannot do to quartz is date it. There's just no way. There's no carbon in quartz. And you all know about carbon-14 and that sort of thing. So there's no way to look at it in any scientific way, no measurable way, and get a date off the skull. Now, F.A. Mitchell Hughes said that, Hedges, I'm sorry, that the skull was about 3,600 years old. So he dates it much earlier. You know, he puts it back in early Egyptian period, way earlier than anything in Central and South America that he was excavating in. Remember, he was excavating at a Lumbantun, which is a Maya site that dates, 500, 800 A.D., thereabouts, give or take a couple of weeks. And so he says he believes it's an Atlantean artifact, something from Atlantis, which is part of the reason he went there, is to find Atlantean artifacts. And so he tries to date it back into the time frame that would work. But there's no scientific way to date the skull. So Anna gets the skull back and continues to tour with it and make a lot of claims about it. And we talked a little bit about those. And I just bumped into some stuff, and I wanted to talk about it as a kind of from an anthropology sort of perspective, that the crystal skull and skulls in general, crystal skulls in general, have become kind of a thing in the occult esoteric world. People are making a great deal of a lot of claims about crystal skulls. And what are some of the claims? Well, because they're clear that the skulls can remove any limitation you have. If you connect with the skull in a spiritual way or whatever way that the practitioners of this say, you can clear your stuff, whatever. That's not an uncommon thing in the occult world, is that you're not clear, you're not healthy, you're dirty, and using this talisman, this practice, this item, this chant, whatever it may be, that you can then remove some of this nasty that you may or may not have. Another individual talked about it opening the heart, that there's 4 dimensions in the world, and we talked about that on my time travel show, the 4th dimension, space-time. Well, he says it's a 5th dimension, that it's a heart dimension, that it's the heart, the 5th chakra. There's a great deal of ritual involved, that some of the individuals that are using crystal skulls have created a ritualistic practice, in a sense, of using these skulls as totems, if you will, or perhaps totem's not the right word, but icons of focus of attention, that if they speak a certain way, they act a certain way, they perform a certain way, they handle and touch the skull in a certain way in order to acquire some sort of result, which is magical thinking and magical practice. They're a very popular thing to buy. China, which is the primary manufacturer, there's a manufacturer in Beijing, sells 20 to 30 of these a day, and people have made enormous purchases, 365 skulls at one time. It sounds like he was maybe building a calendar or something, but it's a business, and they grind this company in China grinds down and creates these crystal skulls out of quartz. There is this idea, this legend that has risen up within the occult mythos of there being 13 skulls, but there's just nothing in any Maya tradition, any Mayan written documents, any Mayan... there's just nothing. It comes from an occult writer who just kind of makes it up out of thin air about these 13 skulls. But they make some very specific claims about the number 13. And I talked about that on my show about the number 13. We talked about that, 12 disciples and Jesus makes 13. 13, connection to a higher self. We have 12 strands of DNA, the spirit being the 13th. She makes the claim and kind of stretches her there being 12 chakras. I guess you get as many as you want. I'm not sure how many you're supposed to have. I thought it was 6, but what do I know? Numerology, 12 has a specific meaning, and so does 13. There's a way to connect those numbers together. And some of the individuals who are using skulls in ritualistic ways or as a, I don't know how, I want to use the right language, so bear with me if I dig around in my brain, that the skulls have personalities, that each skull, based on its what it looks like, what it's made out of, because there's different types of quartz. Not all quartz is absolutely clear quartz. There's rose quartz and there's smoky quartz, and we'll talk a little bit about a lot of the different. We're going to talk about crystals a little bit too, just because this kind of falls into that sort of thinking. A lot of the characteristics of crystals are being applied to the crystal skull. So I want to talk a little bit about just kind of the thinking of crystals and what people are talking about. And again, this individual uses a very specific ritual to open the skull and create a flow and interesting, ritualistic approach to skulls. And one person who was, is an occult practitioner, and when I say occult, I want to be careful. I don't want to blaspheme or hurt anybody's feelings or scare anybody away. Occult means hidden. And of course, in the Judeo-Christian, if it's occult, then it's, of the devil. And so I don't want that. I'm not talking satanic when I use the term occult. I'm just talking about wisdom that has been hidden, that individuals say, okay, I can teach you this wisdom. It's hidden wisdom. It's not necessarily, a Judeo-Christian view would automatically say, well, that's just the devil. And that's fine, but just bear in mind, I want you to understand that how I'm using the language. I don't want to say the wrong thing in the wrong way. So I want to make sure that when I say occult, you know what I'm talking about. They talked about there being a lot of mystery and intrigue. That skulls are magical and primarily used for healing. She does in her practice. There's multiple uses. She argued, this other person I heard, listened to, and read on, that 13 skulls, this was a Mayan belief. Again, we're not finding any of that in the Mayan history. That crystal skulls, and we talked about there being one in London and one in Paris, and this F.A. Mitchell Hedges. She argues, this woman, her name was Krista, that skulls have light, that they are light, they have energy. And we have a caller. Let's see what they got to say here. Push that button, push this button. And let's see what happens. Hello, caller. How are you?
Pretty good. How are you?
Not too bad. What's on the mind today?
Well, this is Dwayne, and I'm supposed to be on
How
Sean's
are
show.
you, Dwayne? There you are.
Good.
Yeah, I mentioned you were going to call. You were going to tell us what you wanted to talk about next week. You're our guest next week. We're going to talk about Book of Mormon geography.
Yeah, just for a minute, and then I'll get off and let you do whatever you're going to do today.
Okay, yeah. So I mentioned that I talked about that I thought that your view of Book of Mormon geography was a much different view in the mid-'80s, I think, is when you first started making your argument. But other individuals out there are now saying the same thing you said back in the 80s.
Yes, yeah, that's right.
So I think it'll be fun to hear from the horse's mouth.
Discovery. Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
So what's your plan for next week? What are some of the questions we can ask? What kind of questions are you going to answer?
A lot of things I can create some questions to be dealt with next Saturday. And one of them will be that, it's been 3,670 years, and that's since the flood, that no religious organization of any kind has ever known where the Adams family's promised land actually is.
Oh, hey, we're starting to break. Give us a couple minutes, and we'll come right back. We'll hold you over.
Okay.
All right.
Very good.
Hey, we're coming back.
Okay.
We're going to hear a little more from Dwayne. Stay with us.
So get out there and enjoy. And don't forget to bring along the refreshing sound of K-Talk Media, 1640 AM.
At Discover, we believe anniversaries should be a time of celebration, not obligation. That's why we think annual fees are ridiculous. And now, just for giving us a try, we're going to give new card members a one-year anniversary gift they'll never forget. At the end of your first year, we'll match all the cash back you've earned dollar for dollar. No caps and no catches, because we know if you try us, you'll like us. And that's worth every penny. Try it and believe it at discover.com/match. Cashback match offer only for new card members. Limitations apply.
Attention all authors. Page Publishing is looking for authors. Have you written a book and want to get it published? Page Publishing will get your book into bookstores and for sale online at Amazon, Apple iTunes, and other outlets. They handle all aspects of the publishing process for you. Printing, cover art, publicity, copyright, and editing. Call 800-501-3689 now for your free author submission kit. That's 800-501-3689 for your free author submission kit. Again, 800-501-3689.
Hey Dave, let's tune into the Simply Senior radio show on K-Talk this Saturday. It's at 2 p.m. and it actually sounds really interesting, and maybe we can learn something.
I love you, Barb, but I think I'll pass. Besides, it sounds more like geezer radio. I bet it's all about soft foods and spray-on hair. How old do you think I am?
Okay, Dave, let me ask you in a different way. Do you want to listen to a radio show for people who are smarter, wiser, and have more life experiences than everyone else? Yes or no?
On second thought, I'm in.
If you want to join us for the Simply Senior radio show, tune into K-Talk at 1640 a.m. every Saturday from 2 to 3 p.m. See you there, slugger.
The Simply Senior Radio Show is a radio program for those people who are a little bit smarter, a little bit wiser, and have a ton more experience than anyone else.
My name is Dr. Jonathan Greenberg. Stop what you are doing because what I'm about to say will improve the quality of your life. ZYPPAH.com. That's ZPA. It's Happy Z spelled backwards. ZPA is designed to be comfortable, affordable, and effective at eliminating snoring. I want to help you stop snoring. Go to ZPA.com and order now. ZYPPAH.com. Snoring is a serious matter. ZPA will conquer your snoring problems. Go to ZPA.com and order now.
Is credit card debt ruining your life? Now you can have a large portion of your credit card debt forgiven. Get Relief Today wants to give you free information that shows you how. This program is proven to work for credit card debt, medical bills, and department store debt. We'll give you the secret to this money-saving program absolutely free. 800-207-8558. That's 800-207-8558. That's 800-207-8558.
Welcome back. We've got Dwayne on the phone, who's our next week's guest, kind of giving us a preview of what he wants to talk about. Go ahead, Dwayne.
Yeah, this is Dwayne Erickson, and I'm just a Book of Mormon reader. I've taken a little further than a lot have done, and what I'm going to share with next week is information about the Promised Land. And the Promised Land of the Adams family has been hidden from the world for 3,670 years. No one's known where that Promised Land is. And it's very important to know what that Promised Land is and where it is because several things. The 12 tribes of Israel are to gather on that Promised Land in the last days, and we're in the last days. The next thing is that, what I've got is that I don't know if I can give an email address, because if I can give an email address...
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, well,
Yeah, I don't mind.
You can get a hold of me on the email, and my email is D for Dwayne, and then Erickson, ERICKSON, all lowercase, and then the numeral 1, and then at allwest, ALLWEST.net. And what I'd like to do is send you information, because the promised land of the Addams family that's so important for the last days has now been identified with hundreds of evidences, and I will send you the YouTube address where I share all those evidences with you.
Excellent.
And then you can study it and be ready for next Saturday's discussion.
Okay.
Because that's very important for us to know that. That is the actual place on the planet Earth where Adam and Eve came forth and are entombed today. That's why it's the promised land. And, you know, the Lehi party was guided here, and the Mulekites were guided to this land. And before that, it was the Jaredite people, after they had survived the flood on the ark, who were guided back. All of those things have been done over the years, and this YouTube identifies it, and you can check it out yourself. And
all right.
I'll send you that information, and then you can study it ahead of time.
Fair enough. I'll get you some questions. We'll try to stump the guest.
Okay, that'll be fun.
Yeah. Hey, well, thanks, Dwayne. I appreciate it. I'm looking forward to the...
I look forward to next Saturday.
Yes, sir. Okay, great. Thank you, Dwayne.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Yep, it's going to be interesting next week. We're going to talk about some stuff that probably hasn't been talked about. I'm excited. I like talking about things that don't normally get talked about. I don't always agree with everything, but I will give a fair hearing. We were talking about crystal skulls tonight because I think there's a whole lot of folklore involved, a lot of human frailties showing up, and we'll get into some of that story there. So this person had 4 crystal skulls that she talked about. One of them was a clear crystal skull that was, she believed, she traveled with this particular skull. She would go to these sacred, what she called sacred sites, which, sacred springs, churches, high grounds, stone circles, that sort of thing. And that she would charge up this skull from these locations, and then she could return home and charge up the other 3. Kind of like charging cell phones maybe. She had a purple fluorite skull. I'm going to go through some types of crystals that are kind of the thing in Christology. I don't know if that's a word, but I'm going to use it. Prove me wrong. 801-254-1640. She argued that it was a very healing color and a very sweet energy, and it had to do with the purple color. She had another skull that was a smoky quartz that was healing energy, and she used that one for what she said was divination or scrying. And scrying, the idea of looking into a crystal to see things, is a very old methodology, and we see it in our current, we see it in our more modern history. We see the Wicked Witch in Cinderella or Sleeping Beauty using a mirror, which is similar to scrying, looking into a mirror to get unknown or hidden information. John Dee, a very well-known occultist in the 16th century, was a scryer. He believed that he could communicate with angels through looking into crystals. The church kind of looked at him with a raised eyebrow, but he had enough dignity that it didn't get him in too much trouble until later on in life. She also had, so this individual believed that each skull had a different personality, and she used her skulls primarily for healing and divination, using, much like the other individual used, a ritual to kind of open up the powers of the crystal skull to move energy back and forth from the skull to the person, sort of thing. This woman did the same thing for healing and divination, just didn't use as much ritual in her practice. Crystals are a big thing in the, I want to say they're an occult thing. And I've already given a definition of occult, so I don't want to, maybe I'm using it wrong again. Within the practice, there are a lot of individuals who practice non-traditional belief systems that crystals are a thing, that people who believe in this believe that energy and crystals are very useful for various reasons, and that there are specific kinds of crystals that are more useful in some ways than others. Now, I'm not going to argue whether or not crystals do or do not do any of these things, but I will say that there are people who absolutely believe that that crystals have these sorts of properties. So this person argued that if you're going to start a crystal collection and use crystals as a method of amplifying and getting the good out of the crystal, that you needed specific ones, and she argued that you needed a clear quartz crystal. It was a clarifier and an amplifier, so you could use a crystal from one type with this clear quartz, and it would amplify whatever the other crystal would do. And it would also clear out your brain from, again, we talked about that being a very common thread in occult practices, that, getting rid of toxic energies or whatever the language is. Rose quartz was another crystal. Love and compassion. We talked, the idea of red, or at least pink, being a color of love. We talked on my devil show about red receiving this idea of it being evil, but that had to do with the iconography of, Persian belief, and then when it was filtered through Judeo-Christian, this color was given to the devil, but it doesn't seem to have come over this far. Rose quartz, light pink. Love and compassion, a bonding. You can bond with your crystals. It was one of those crystals, rose quartz. If you want to make friends with your crystal, that was the one to do it. Any kind of love was amplified by a rose quartz crystal. Fluorite had many different colors, and it was an octahedron. It had sacred geometry, and it assists with decision making. It helps you think better. And it focuses the power of whatever color of any other crystal. If the color is a specific power foci, I don't know what the word is, but apparently the fluorite focuses that. Green jade, a very healing stone. It's argued that it brings good fortune, that there is something to do with green and good health. Jade was an Oriental gem. It's a very difficult gem to work with. You can't split it. You can't cut it like you do diamonds. It has it's a very sturdy gem. One of the things that it represents in Chinese mythos is that if someone is wearing jade, it provides protection and health, because it's such a sturdy and difficult stone to work with. It also, in China, it became associated with the royal family, the imperial family, and so it has this sort of divine essence, if you will. Physical protection. Amethyst, another, this purple stone. You see them all the time, the geode kind of, the purple stones. The deeper the color, the more energy. It's a very spiritual stone. And I'm not saying, I don't necessarily, like I said, I don't know if I agree with this, but this is what they say. spiritual. Amethyst is very spiritual. It enhances spirituality. It enhances protection, provides physical protection. It helps you open your third eye. There's an argument out there that our pineal gland is on either eyeball, and we need to open it so we can see the truth of the world. Great scene in a movie on H.P. Lovecraft about the pineal gland coming out and looking around, called The Reanimator, if you get a chance. Great movie. H.P. Lovecraft, we're going to talk about him some more in another show, but because he's always never dull. Some of the other crystals out there that people talk about that have these characteristics, black tourmaline, it has an electrical sort of thing. It transmits energy, neutralizes negative energy, protects from EMF. Like, so if your cell phone's trying to kill you, having black tourmaline will help with that. Smoky quartz. There is also in this community a lot of fakes, people saying, hey, this is real quartz, when in reality it's just quartz that's been irradiated. They argue it for detoxing bad energy. Blue calcite, soft, gentle, peace and calm. The bigger the piece, the bigger the piece. I'm punning here. I'm being punny. A big piece gives you more peace. It balances your body, balances your chakras. That's always a thing, apparently. And more, this is the one thing it bumped into. It connects you with angels. I haven't all of this. I haven't seen any real angelology show up in a lot of this belief. Hematite, a metal. It's actually more of a metal than a stone. Lots of fakes out there, but it grounds you. Apparently, it connects you to the inner core of Mother Earth. And then there's this a crystal I've never heard of before called natural citrine. It's kind of it looks like a smoky quartz, more yellow, but it's supposed to provide a lot of energy and vibration and be good for you. We're going to continue talking about the nature of crystals, and then maybe we'll go back and we'll be talking more about the crystal skulls, which is the topic tonight. If you have any questions, give us a call, 801-254-1640. See you on the other side.
I just saved hundreds of dollars by switching to Geico. I feel like I'm on top of the world.
Disclaimer, you will not be transported to the top of the world. In the unlikely event you find yourself at the Arctic Circle, seek shelter from the elements immediately to avoid frostbite and or hypothermia. Geico will not be responsible if you find yourself in a cave or crevasse with a lonely abominable snowman, who in all likelihood will force you to play games including but not limited to Go Fish, charades, Chinese checkers, or his personal favorite, Red Rover, send Yeti on over. Geico is not liable for any damages, either physical or emotional.
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more.
With OnStar, you don't need to drive the newest model car to have the latest in connectivity. If you're not connected, now get select OnStar services free for 3 years with no strings attached. You'll get a mobile app that lets you start your car or unlock your doors from your phone, and monthly diagnostic email reports. Just push the blue OnStar button and ask for 3 years of free mobile app and diagnostic services. Emergency and security services are not included. Eligible on select 2011 and newer vehicles. Visit OnStar.com for details, coverage map, and system limitations.
Men, if you're like me, you appreciate the feeling of a clean, smooth shave from a quality blade. The sort of shave that cuts clean, without the burn. So why are you messing around with generic razors that cost $32 for an 8-pack, when you can shave with Harry's high-quality German-engineered blades for half the price? And if saving money and a clean shave isn't incentive enough, Harry's will give you their starter set, complete with a razor, 3 of their world-famous blades, and shaving cream for just $15. And shipping is always free. We'll also give you $5 off your first order.
You're listening to the all-new K-Talk Media, KBJA 1640 AM, Sandy, Salt Lake, and the entire Wasatch Front, bringing you live local two-way talk.
Senator John McCain's request that the 2 men who defeated his presidential ambitions speak at his funeral.
If we're ever tempted to forget who we are, to grow weary of our cause, John's voice will always come as a whisper over our shoulder. We are better than this. America is better than this.
Former President George W. Bush remembered McCain warmly at the National Cathedral, as did former President Obama, who said they often met in the Oval Office just to talk.
Our disagreements didn't go away during these private conversations. Those were real, and they were often deep. But we enjoyed the time we shared away from the bright lights, and we laughed with each other, and we learned from each other.
Well, President Trump was pointedly not invited to the McCain funeral. He played golf at one of his clubs and tweeted about the Russia investigation and stalled trade negotiations with Canada. A federal judge has denied an immediate end to the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program, or DACA. Correspondent Tal Kopan says the judge on Friday ruled against Texas and other states governed by Republicans who were fighting any extension of Obama-era protections for young immigrant dreamers.
He held off for now, halting the program, allowing people to be able to keep renewing their permits. But certainly this should send a warning to anyone who supports DACA that a ruling to the contrary could be coming this fall.
A white supremacist group is targeting Florida candidate for governor Andrew Gillum in a racist robocall. The group Road to Power put out their call over a soundtrack of drums and jungle noises where a man pretending to be Gillum talks in a caricatured black dialect, speaking about Negroes living in mud huts. Well, Gillum is a Democrat and African American. His GOP opponent, Ron DeSantis, says he condemns the message. I'm Evan Haining.
At Fidelity, we believe nothing should come between you and your money. So we're introducing zero account fees with zero minimums to open an account. All because we want you to invest with zero trade-offs. Visit fidelity.com/value to learn more. Zero account minimums and zero account fees apply to retail brokerage accounts only. Expenses charged by investments such as funds and managed accounts and for commissions, interest charges, or other expenses for transactions may still apply. Fidelity Brokerage Services, member NYSE, SIPC.
Did you know carbon monoxide is odorless and invisible? Help ensure your family is protected from the dangers of carbon monoxide. CO alarms should be installed on every level and in every bedroom. And remember, alarms don't last forever, and it's important to replace them every 5 to 10 years. First Alert has been protecting homes and families since 1958 and encourages you to learn more about whole home safety at firstalert.com and visit Lowe's Home Improvement stores to purchase carbon monoxide alarms today.
The investigation continues into what may have caused a tire to blow on a semi-truck which crashed head-on into a Greyhound bus, killing 8 people and injuring dozens more. Here's correspondent Jim Roop with an update.
NTSB investigator Pete Katowski says there are no findings yet from the electronic logging devices, or black boxes, if you will, from the truck or the bus. At Saturday's briefing, he said investigators are still collecting information and sending some items back to its lab in Washington for further forensic analysis. The driver of the truck says when the tire blew, the steering locked up and he could not avoid the crash. Katowski says everything from the environment to vehicle performance is being considered.
Missouri's Attorney General is suing the company that owns the duck boat that sank and killed 17 people during a storm. Josh Hawley says Ripley Entertainment violated state law by ordering the captain to complete the lake portion of the trip in that storm so that it would not have to refund money to passengers for having an uncompleted trip. I'm Evan Haining.
Hey there, I'm a glue stick, so I have one job. I glue kid stuff. So sorry for being jealous of Guy.
If you're a small business, first impressions can make all the difference. With Grasshopper, you get all the features of a professional business phone system on your mobile phone. Choose a business phone number, make calls, and send texts. Stay connected and work from anywhere with features like Wi-Fi calling and our desktop app. Set up your account in minutes with no long-term contracts and 24/7 customer support. Make your small business big. Now get $20 off your first month when you visit grasshopper.com/radio. That's grasshopper.com/radio.
Howdy, folks. Colonel Sanders here. Folks keep asking me how KFC can afford to fit 2 pieces of Kentucky Fried Chicken, taters and gravy, a biscuit, a medium drink, and a cookie into my KFC $5 fill-ups and still sell them for just $5. Well, I saved a little money by only paying for 25 seconds of this here 30-second commercial. KFC, it's finger-licking good. At participating KFCs for a limited time. Prices may vary. Tax extra. Extra charge for breast piece and side item substitution may apply. Howdy, folks. I'm Colonel Sanders. When I told folks my signature KFC pot pie was filled with delicious Kentucky Fried Chicken, veggies, and topped in a golden flaky crust and only cost $3.99, they said I was crazy. and maybe I was, because that was 1980, and $3.99 was a lot of money back then. But today, getting a meal that size for just $3.99 is a really great deal. So stop into a KFC and get yourself a pot pie. It's finger-licking good. At participating KFCs for a limited time. Prices may vary. Tax extra.
Ready, set, sweat. Your Burlington store's loaded with all the latest workout gear at amazing savings. What's hot? Black, white, and pastels are totally on trend, as well as mesh, lattice, and lace-up details. Turn heads in tops with strappy backs and bottoms with cool prints and color blocking. Plus, choose from your favorite brand name sneakers, wireless headphones, kettlebells, and more. Hurry into Burlington and save up to 65% off other retailers' prices every day. Burlington, style for everyone.
Can I play with madness?
Welcome to Dr. Grimmy's Old Time Medicine Show and Conversation Extravaganza. Step right up, ladies and gentlemen, and any others. If you have something that ails you, a problem, a challenge, a struggle, we have the cure. Are you bored, disdainful, thoughtful, maudlin, frustrated, or constipated? We have the cure that you have been waiting for. Myself, world-famous Dr. Grimmy, and my faithful and erstwhile assistant, Jake the Snake Garn, Cosmic Serpent, master of hidden wisdom, and owner of copious amounts of inner light. We will teach you, you will learn, and you will be happy. And so, my fine ladies and gentlemen, and others, please step right up. All you have to do is listen. We will sell you the right snake oil. It will cure what ails you, and if nothing ails you, it'll cure that too. We will teach you the secrets of the ages and the esotericness of esoteric. So enter with us now into the inner circle of sacred wisdom. Here you will find what you're looking for. Welcome back. We're top of the next hour. We're having a good time here talking about crystal skulls and crystals in general. Crystal skulls specifically. Skulls are an interesting image. We see skulls as whenever you see a skull, you are kind of drawn to the idea of death. We see skulls as an image of death, as a symbol of death. When you see the hooded figure of Charon, the guy who rows the boat across the River Styx that you have to give the quarter to, he's usually a skeletal face. So that's the nature, when we see a skull, we see an image of death. And not always in a negative way, but in a way. I mean, the pirates in the 17th century had this symbol of a pirate was the skull and crossbones, the two large bones of the leg crossed. Now, interestingly enough, the only other imagery that has that in place, the argument is that was made as a flag in the early days. But I want to talk about this imagery of the skull and skull and crossbone. During the 12th century, when individuals would leave Europe and go to the Holy Land on crusade, and bear in mind you were told, okay, if you go on crusade, you spend a year fighting for the Holy Land or against the Saracens, as they were called, you would receive a forgiveness of sins, that you would be washed clean if you fulfilled your vow. And individuals that died in the Holy Land, it was really expensive. You only shipped things that you could make money off of. So it was people, if you died somewhere away from home, you got buried where you died. And that was true specifically in the Holy Land. They weren't going to put somebody on a boat and ship them back to be buried in their homeland. What would happen, particularly if the individual was wealthy or noteworthy, they would be buried, and after a couple of years, they would be disinterred, and the skull and the two large leg bones would be gathered up, put in a sack, and they would be returned home and buried wherever the individual was from. And most of the individuals that died in the Holy Land and came back, having fulfilled their vow, on their gravestone, on whatever it was over their grave, they would have on their grave a skull and crossbones. And what that would tell the person looking at the grave is that this individual died in the Holy Land and had their body returned, these two parts of their body returned to their homeland to be buried. And so it was a matter of honor for someone to have this kind of icon, or this icon in the family plot or in the local graveyard. And it was and it was a big deal in the sense that many of the individuals who have this symbol on their gravestones were Templars, because Templars died in the Holy Land pretty consistently, and many of them were wealthy individuals who took the vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience and went over to fight in the Holy Land, and then their skull and their two leg bones would be brought back. One of the theories about the Templars is that the fleet of Templar ships that was in port prior to the arrest of the Templars disappeared. It left. It wasn't there when the French government of King Louis the Fair went to capture it, and they disappeared. Nobody knows where it ended up. I would argue it ended up in Scotland and supported Robert the Bruce. The treasurer supported Robert the Bruce because he gave sanctuary, I think, to many of the fugitive Templars. And they were a solid fighting force, and so when he went to war against King Edward II, he had an advantage in that regard. But this fleet disappeared, and we don't hear about it. And all of a sudden, the next thing we know, we see ships that are attacking Spanish ships, which was a Catholic country, with this skull and crossbones flag. And the Templars, who had been, they were betrayed by the church and hounded, would probably have a resentment against the church. And so saying that, we died in the Holy Land, but we haven't been able to return home. What a great way to say that than to raise a flag of a skull and crossbones. We have a caller. Let's see what they got to say. Got to push some buttons here. Push that button. Hello, caller. How are you? Can you? Maybe I didn't get you. Try it again. Hello, caller. How are you? What? Okay. I'm sorry. I didn't hang up on you. Try back. 801-254-1640. I'm still here, and I'll figure out how to push the buttons again. Sorry. So, what a great way to tell whoever you're going after, particularly if it's a Spanish ship supported by the Catholic Church, that you were pissed off and you wanted to get some payback, than to run up a Jolly Roger, as it's called. I don't know. It's as good a story as any. There may or may not be some history, but there is a significant connection between this symbology on the Crusader graves and Templar graves of the skull and crossbones, representing the death in the Holy Land and then returning home for burial. That is directly correlated, I think, with this Jolly Roger. And so if you want to know where the Templar fleet went, I think that may is as good an explanation as any, that they went out and started thumping on Catholic Spanish ships. But I digress a little bit. Skulls, we show up, some interesting skulls out there in the history of the world, if you will. Interesting, there's a I got to learn to talk. There is a prehistoric skull, a Neanderthal skull, so we know it's prehistoric, with what appears to be a bullet hole. Hard to say. Bullets usually leave a very specific kind of mark on a skull. I've only seen the photograph. I haven't, handled the skull, but there does appear to be a very round circular image in the skull. We got a caller. Okay, push this button. Push that button. Hello, caller. How are you?
Yeah, this is Eagle from down in Dixie, Utah.
Okay, gotcha. I'm sorry if I hung up on you. I hope that wasn't me.
No, yeah, I'm just saying, asking, do you need a pair of glasses so you're pushing the right button?
I don't know. You know, I think I am pushing the right button, but I guess I'm not. You know, I'm getting old. I'm getting old-timers disease. I don't know what buttons I'm pushing. What's up, Eagle?
What tie does the Skull and Bones Society that Shrub Bush was inducted into, and what you're talking about?
Now, I bumped into the Skull and Bones Society because whenever you search skull, you're going to find the Skull and Bones Society is going to show up. So I did dance around the edges a little bit of that history. A lot of it is, what I looked at was conspiratorial, in that they're arguing that all of these individuals are conspiring to rule the world. And that's probably perhaps as good an explanation as any, that it's a secretive club in the Yale campus that you're invited to join. And there's X number of members, I can't remember the number exactly, per year that are inducted into the club. I think that so many per year can be drafted, and then, but that doesn't necessarily limit the membership. And that there's a pretty complicated or ritualistic initiation procedure that may or may not be painful. Some witnesses argue that they've heard screams of pain and that sort of thing occurring during Pledge Week, I suppose it would be called. But that many of the individuals who are members of this organization at Yale end up being, they turn up being in charge of a lot of things in the government, the CIA, the Treasury Department. They become presidents. We've had 2 or 3 presidents that were members. And so I think, like any any fraternity, it gives, the idea of fraternity is that you get together and like, oh, you're my fraternity brother. I'm going to give you the job before I give some stranger the job. It's kind of a mutual admiration society, in that they assist each other that way. And maybe if you can afford to go to Yale, then you're probably going to afford to be in, getting the good jobs and being around the good people, especially if the organization's been around a while. Once somebody gets into a position of power, they're going to spread it around. Is it nefarious? Is it evil? Well, anytime there's secrecy, I suppose there's the potential for evil. But I don't know. I mean, they're really, other than just the conspiracy stuff that I've heard, and there's some interesting connections, but I haven't looked at it close enough to make a decision either way right now.
Well, it's obvious to me that Shrub Bush, Jr., that he sold his soul, and I think the old man sold it too. And, they've been in a position of power even long before Daddy Bush was initiated into that type of a thing. For back into the 1930s, I believe they had a grandfather was into the big-time money stuff. But to me, the connecting factor of all of this comes out of the city of London, which is a very occult city, in my opinion. What you got any comments on that?
Well, there's all kinds of secret societies that people join for various reasons. We got the Masons are kind of the biggest elephant in the room, even though they're not entirely as secret as, all you got to do is show up and be nice and pay your dues, and you can learn all the secrets. Anytime you get people getting together in secret to do stuff, it's going to run afoul of something, that's the nature of conspiracy. Hey, let's hold you over, Eagle,
Sure.
and we'll bang on it some more. Give us a call, 801-254-1640. We'll see you on the other side.
When the weather's hot outside, cool off with a splash of K-Talk Media, 1640 AM. Oh yeah, now that's refreshing.
VF Law is a regional law firm with offices in 6 western states, known for its unparalleled experience in HOA law and plaintiff civil litigation team, led by Ted McBride.
Hi, I'm trial attorney Ted McBride, and together with my team, we've recovered millions of dollars for our clients in cases ranging from car accidents, legal malpractice, medical malpractice, civil rights, and construction defect. If you feel your rights have been violated or if you're getting stonewalled by an insurance company, give us a call. We can help.
Call Ted McBride at 801-355-9594 or visit vf-law.com to schedule your free consultation. 801-355-9594.
I met someone. You hear it a lot from people on Match because more people have met their someone on Match than any other dating app. Everyone wants to find that meaningful connection, and Match is not only #1 in first, but second dates too. Now here's a free offer for our listeners. Go to Match.com/mix for 7 days free. That's 7 days completely free to search, view photos, and connect. This free offer is found at Match.com/mix. That's Match.com/mix. Match.com/mix.
Does your dog itch, scratch, stink, or shed like crazy? Come to Dynovite for help.
Order a 90-day supply of Dynovite.
Everything we tried failed except the Dynovite.
Pick up 2 bottles of Super Mega Fish Oil.
Get the 3rd bottle free. Packed with omega-3, DHA, and EPA fatty acids.
Super Mega is great for your dog's immune system, healthy skin, and soft, shiny fur.
Dogs love it. Try Super Omega Fish Oil.
Buy 2, get 1 free.
At Dynovite.com.
DINOVITE.com.
The essence of sales is transferring enthusiasm to the customer. K-Talk Media is looking for people who have an unabashed enthusiasm for live local radio and who would love to share the message of our station with businesses who would like to tap into our large, loyal audience. Do you want a fun, energetic, and rewarding position with a company that makes a difference? Then join our team and feel the love. Full, part-time, or anytime positions available with great compensation. Call us today, 801-253-4883, 801-253-4883, or go to ktalkmedia.com and shoot us a message.
Welcome back to the Dr. Grimmy Show. We're talking with Eagle, who's always got some fascinating stuff to say. We kind of were talking about the Skull and Bone Society at Yale University, and I've just been kind of boning up on it quickly over the break. And it is a pretty large rabbit hole. It just the over the top on the table history is not entirely, it's rather complicated. So I can't imagine other stuff coming up from it. There is a lot of luminaries who came out of the Skull and Bones, and John Kerry, a presidential candidate, was a member, and George Bush was also a member. Interestingly, that 2 presidential candidates, one who became president, were both members of this organization.
Well, I think if you look deep enough into that, you'll find out that President Ronald Reagan, as well as President John F. Kennedy, were members of it.
Like I said, I've quickly overviewed it without kind of trying to get too, just looked at the highlighted names. William Howard Taft was a member. His father was a founder. Generally, apparently, the 15 juniors are selected, and they're apparently you get tapped on the shoulder and say, show up, go to the bones or something, some cryptic word, and you show up at the meeting house on campus.
Yeah.
And go through whatever process they have. But the members, George Bush and John Kerry, neither one of them would discuss their membership because it was
well,
secret.
sure they wouldn't. They're sworn to secrecy. Now, back to Kennedy and President Reagan. I'm not totally sure of that, but I'm fairly sure of it. And both of those guys, they came off the reservation, and one of them was killed, and the other, there was an attempted assassination on him. And who would have benefited from both of those?
Well, and that's the question, when you talk about a murder investigation, such as the Kennedy assassination would be, is the first question is who's the closest relative? It's always the closest relative, primarily. It's first suspect that you look at. And since his wife was sitting in the car with him, you can take her off the list. Though it's a possibility, she certainly had enough reason to be mad at him, considering his dalliances. You have the Dulles brothers, who had been pushed under the bus and thrown out of Camelot, if you will. That had reasons. You had the Cubans who were pissed off because he betrayed them, mano a mano. He promised air support and didn't give any. I also heard an interesting story that the Air Force showed up, but they showed up an hour late because of daylight savings time.
Yeah.
I don't know how true that is, but knowing the military, it doesn't surprise me that could happen.
The question in all of these, all you need to ask is, cui bono? Who profits from it? Well, obviously Johnson profited from the death of Kennedy, and he wasn't quite up for the job, and so after his first elected being as a president, he threw in the towel. No guts.
Well, it cut into his drinking time. He was not being president made it hard to be a drunk.
Very well could have been. Now on Reagan, and it's a strange thing. I was able to shake hands with Reagan one time and ask him a question, and that was totally different setup, but it's said that he also would at times be a member of the Grove. Now, I would suspect that people who are trying to shoot straight, and when I say that, I'm talking politically. I'm not talking about necessarily sexual morality. I'm talking about political straightness, being straight with their electorate. Right. Like I say, Kennedy and Reagan were supposedly members of the Grove, and I guess.
Now, when you're talking about what's known as the Bohemian Grove, the club in California.
Yep.
Okay. I don't know much about that either.
Henry Kissinger.
I've heard of it.
I say Henry Kissinger, a very, very viable non-politician, but not a handful, but an actual basketful of political power was a member of it.
Right,
so,
and it's interesting, because they invite luminaries of various, various fields to be members, and they seem to be, they don't have a specific, the members that we know of seem to cross the boundaries of all political colors, stripes, and variations. That it's individuals who are, creating change in the world. So, you know, Bill Gates and individuals
Well,
like that. Henry Kissinger certainly would have been one of those kind of individuals.
Uh-huh. A book that's a very enlightening book, in my opinion, is a book called The Temple and the Lodge.
I saw that. I haven't read it yet.
Well, it's a winner. But another neat place to visit in Salt Lake is the Masonic Lodge there on about 750 East South Temple. They have an open house and invite the public to come in maybe yearly or semi.
I think it's once a month. It's like the last something.
Oh, it's once a month.
Yeah, I think so.
Well,
at least they give a tour of the temple, small T.
Now I've got some acquaintances that are members of it, and one of them is much younger than me. One of them is much older, and it seems to be somewhat consistent with either power or a conceived way to get the power. But another interesting thing, they have a library in the it'd be the northeast corner of the basement part of the building. And man, if you go through there and read the titles of the books, you're going to quickly come to understand how much subversive power they have. Because they've got some real movers and shakers in government right here in Utah.
Well, and Masonry, there was a big, in the early part of the 20th century, I had a relative who coined the term Romanism and rebellion. And
give me the title again.
He said the term, he blamed the Democrats for being the party of Romanism and rebellion. I can't remember his name.
You know what rhymes with that?
What's that?
Romney.
Yeah, Romanism and rebellion. Well, it shifted the election because apparently people didn't like the idea of that it appeared as a vicious attack against Roman Catholic people, a political attack, not just a religious attack, and that kind of didn't set well with the electorate. And of course, Prohibition was somewhat, I don't know if it was either just getting started or had just gotten started. And so, yeah, that statement kind of shifted the whole election. I'll have to look at the history. It's a family story because we're related.
Just the idea that Henry Kissinger was a frequenter of the Grove gives me the chills because I see him shaking, giving secret handshakes to guys that are federal elected officials from the state of Utah. And boy, that makes me quiver all over the place.
Well, and that's the rub with secrecy, is that where do your loyalties lie? If I join an organization and I make a commitment to the organization that says, okay, no matter what, if the choice is between the organization and your loyalty to the Constitution or your loyalty to the church or your loyalty to your family, then you have to choose the organization. That's the big issue, is what is it that they are required to give up for membership? What is the price that they have to pay? Where do their loyalties actually lie? If serving the United States and making a decision about economics or policy or government that is going to harm another member of that organization, then where do your loyalties lie? Do they lie with the government or do they lie with the organization?
As an elected president of the United States, it would be obvious to me that unless you were really even beyond religiously dedicated, that once you are elected as president of the United States, unless there's been some under-the-table deal, you're going to let your loyalty go to the majority of the voters.
Well, and my understanding is if you're elected president, you represent everybody, including the ones that didn't vote for you. Right?
Yeah.
You know, you can't just pick and choose. Now you're the representative of everybody, whether you like it or not. I don't think our current president recognizes that.
Well, he hadn't had a good indoctrination into how the real political world works. But let me just say one other thing, and you just may have some other people that want to get in.
Not yet. Keep going.
Well, there's a new world order on the horizon. Now, that can have a double meaning. It can have a new order instead of this old order that's been played since 1609, when there was a Romney who was I believe his title was sheriff of the city of London. There's a shift in it, and it can either go to a deeper city of London politically oriented thing, or it can be a breakaway and go the other way. Now, I think that Russia, as a Christian nation under Putin, is going in the right direction. I hope that China has caught on to this thing, and they're a wily old bunch of guys over there. I think they have, but I can't see it as closely as I can about Putin, because China is. It's funny. It's not a Christian nation, but it has some old independent thinking in China, and part of that is capitalism. If you think that capitalism doesn't exist in China, just get one of those guys and try and compete with him in business and see what happens.
Well, and that's the interesting is that they've kind of done they've said, okay, we are going to allow some capitalism to go on. And what they've done is it's the army that owns all the factories and all of the businesses or has stock in all of the businesses. And so the army, instead of getting, they get the budget from the government, but they also get the budget from their financial interests. They support themselves. It'd be like if here the Air Force owned Walmart, and that's how they paid for new planes. It's an interesting dynamic of how that's kind of evolved, that the government entities are actually the business entities.
If I may, let me throw out one more idea, and the people that are computer savvy and kind of geeks on the computer, which I am not. I've had to read it from print. There is an outfit called the BRICS nations. That's Brazil, Russia, India, China, and several other countries. And those are the ones that are in this BRICS nations. And they just may take the lead worldwide. And if they do, and if my feeling is correct, we may see a new world order, but it won't be the one that was referenced by Daddy Bush when he talked about a new world order. Totally
well, and I've heard that there is some China and Russia and some of the South American and African nations are working together on a free trade agreement, which, overall strengthens everybody. The downside is that we haven't been in a free trade agreement with anybody. We've always had shackles of some kind that we don't talk about. It benefits the other end, but we kind of take it in the shorts because we're already ahead of the curve. So they want us to, instead of coming together with us, we have to give up something. So none of the, they talk about free trade, but none of these agreements have been free. And I think that's one thing that if Trump has done anything is brought that information to the table, that these agreements have not been free trade agreements, and if you want to have a free trade agreement, then it needs to be free. And if you don't, then we're going to play the tariff game, because you're playing it anyway. We're even with these countries we have free trade agreements with, there are tariffs that for somehow, because we're the economic giant, we have to put up with. And I disagree.
Well,
free trade is free. If it's going to work, it has to be free.
An old Chinese proverb says, "May you live in interesting times."
Well, we certainly do.
And we have either been given that privilege, or we have been cursed with that saying. May you live in
it's kind of a curse. May you live in interesting times. So we're on a break. You want to stay over, or are you done?
I'm finished with what I want to say. If you got any questions on me or want to take me in a different direction, I'll stay. If you got nothing,
we'll try. We'll hold you over. We'll do that. Okay. See you on the other side.
Businesses who would like to tap into our large, loyal audience. Do you want a rewarding position with a company that makes a difference? Then join our team and feel the love. Full, part-time, or anytime positions available with great compensation. Call us today, 801-253-4883, 801-253-4883, or go to ktalkmedia.com and shoot us a message.
I don't mean to brag, kid, but I'm a pretty healthy guy. Running a growing business means I'm always running. Not many can keep up with me. But you know who can? Grainger. When it comes to getting me the answers I need right when I need them, Grainger moves just as fast as I do. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They're a good running partner, because no matter what problem I have or question, Grainger's got my back. Call clickgrainger.com or stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Project Rushmore. In the lore of Harley-Davidson, it's a tribute to the power of 4 young men who built this company. Proof that 112 years of innovation breeds a soul that roars. Because the Harley-Davidson Project Rushmore motorcycles are monumental power. With high-output twin-cam 103 engines and touchscreen infotainment for navigation and communication, power is everywhere you look, hear, and feel. Take a Road Glide Special on a power trip at your Harley-Davidson dealer.
You're traveling to another dimension. A dimension not only of sight and sound, but of mind. A journey into a wondrous land whose boundaries are that of imagination. Your next stop, the Twilight Zone.
Welcome back to the Dr. Grimmy Show. Got distracted looking at some more Skull and Bones info. I noticed their symbol is the skull and bones, this skull with crossed leg bones, which is I talked about it being the Jolly Roger, and this relationship to Crusaders who died in the Holy Land, but then were, just the skull and the leg bones were returned for burial because it was cheaper and less messy to do it that way than it was to try to bring a dead body back. And so that maybe there was a connection between, the Templars and the pirates. And I wonder what this skull and bones represents, because it is kind of a Jolly Roger sort of looking image, or is it related to perhaps an anti-Catholic, anti-church, as perhaps in a Templar context, it would be perceived. What do you think?
May I ask, it's a rather personal question, and if you don't want to answer that, that's fine with me. Jim Kirkwood, did you know him personally?
I did not. I met him, I talked, said hello, how are you, and just chatted I was producing a show that ended just as his came on, so we kind of, as he was coming in, setting up.
He invited me to his home on Sunday nights at one time to study what is called Kabbalah or Kabbalah. And that was kind of a fun experience. He did a little bit of what I call mesmerizing, or attempt to do a little bit of mesmerizing. And then when I didn't go along with it, he asked me not to come. I got a kind of a kick out of that. But probably within probably a 10-mile radius of downtown Salt Lake, there are a lot of signs and symbols that indicate something other than straight up Christianity, and we are supposed to be a Christian state. And I can't figure it out, because a lot of the people that I've met and supped with in those places, hey, at least they don't. They're not of the same Christianic thinking as I am.
Well, when you say symbols, tell me about them.
Well, the all-seeing eye, for being one of them.
Okay.
And I rather not shoot myself in the foot and point out others, but if one becomes interested, all they need to do is to go for a nice little walk within a 10-mile radius of the religious houses in different places, and they'll come up with the stuff if they've got a real interest. If they only have a superficial interest, or they're trying to, kind of hide it themselves, they ain't going to find it.
What's interesting, is as I've studied some of the Enlightenment thinkers, Rousseau and a couple of others, that the way, the things that the principles they're talking about, especially when they talk about divinity and God, because they were all quasi-religious, or at least had to pretend to be religious at some level. The idea of this divine all-seeing eye was a very kind of, it was a religious symbol that wasn't religious. It was a symbol for God that didn't connect with any other symbols for God. It wasn't a cross, it wasn't a whatever.
Yeah.
It was a way to express this idea, this Enlightenment idea of this natural law coming from, the natural rights of man coming from God, without actually being Catholic or being Protestant or being anything at all. And I don't think it carries, and certainly it could have been picked up by others and developed a nefarious sort of view, particularly when you start talking about secrecy and secret societies. But overall, I don't think, as an Enlightenment principle, I don't think that all-seeing eye is evil per se. It's just a way of describing the divine in a very esoteric.
Well, I see. That's where I differ with you. What you just said, yes, it is true, but the very opposite of it is true. It can be either way, in my opinion.
And when you say opposite, as not divine, what are you saying exactly?
Well, no. You the divine. How do we define divine? It has it's something like it has more than what appears on the surface.
Boy, that's a fascinating question. How do we define the nature of the divine? I think in the Enlightenment, they wanted to do so without any of the barnacles of current thinking, Protestant or Catholic. And so they, I think, avoided all of the symbolism that goes along with that. And perhaps, that's, and I'm not an expert on Enlightenment philosophy, so I could be up in the night. But it just strikes me that as I've learned about the thinking in the Enlightenment and how how the United States as a government was impacted by that thinking, you do start to see connections that way that I didn't see before.
Well,
and I don't know how you define the divine. I guess an all-seeing eye is as good as any.
Yeah.
I
like.
They could have picked a badger.
I've been around the world, and not traveling from headquarter to headquarter to headquarter of the different states, but I've been in Hong Kong, and I've seen what at that time was called the Bamboo Curtain. I've been to Vietnam, seen some very strange things there, where they worship Buddha, and when we say worship Buddha, not in the same sense that we worship a god. They worship basically an understanding. The Buddhists, and I adopt that theory a little bit. All things are, to me, are good until they prove otherwise. But for me, practically everything that I look that is authoritative proves otherwise right off the bat. It doesn't take me more than 2 minutes to take a look at it and see if it's authoritarian and not good for me personally or not.
So that poses an interesting question. If the founding fathers or the students of the Enlightenment, and a lot of these organizations, the Skull and Bones, are kind of, what was the founding date? 1832, so relatively early in the Republic. Still, a couple generations removed from the founding fathers, but probably they're still teaching Enlightenment thinking. What is, when you say Luciferian, so that would be when you say the opposite of, the all-seeing eye, is that a representation of the divine, and this is just a question, or is it a representation of something other than the divine? What we would call perhaps Luciferian, something that was opposed to all that is good, or Gnostic in its...
I'm going to give you my personal view, okay?
Yep.
And this has come from a lot of study. It takes away from my fundamental ability as a human being to guide my own life. And the all-seeing eye, if it knows everything, it'll guide it for you. And I'm not going to let any kind of ideology or disposition of a man tell me how to think. God has told me how to think when he gives me a brain. He doesn't need to say, I've given you a brain. I just recognize that I'm not an animal. I'm a thinking human being.
Right. And I agree with that the all-seeing eye, the interesting aspect, considering as a symbol, my anthropology brain is churning away. As a symbol, it's an eyeball. It doesn't have hands. It doesn't have feet. It doesn't have a mouth. It's just an eyeball.
Yeah.
And that, that kind of implies that, I'm the one with the hands and the feet and the mouth.
Exactly.
Not the, whatever that eyeball is looking at.
Well, look, I've used up enough of your time, but I would just give you this one admonition. You have got probably the most eye-opening of programs that I hear on K-Talk. And if people will listen to you and follow up on what you have to say, they can go out and judge whether you're blowing hot air or not. And that puts you in a very precarious position, but I know you fulfill that position already because, generally speaking, you announce what you studied the week before, and that's what you're going to present. And frankly, I like somebody that prepares a program so I'm not just getting a bunch of mishmash BS.
Well, I've done that a couple of times, just for the sake of discussion. I have mishmashed my way through a couple of shows because it's just the nature of...
Once you get studying a lot of this stuff, you can, by one reading of one book, you can give a dozen or more different interpretations and directions as to where you're going. So I'm not holding that against you.
I just hope that I'm interesting and somebody leaves the show a little smarter than when they showed up.
Well, let me just say this. If they're not studied well enough themselves and don't have a good enough fundamental background, they're going to think that you're entertainment.
Well, I do want to be entertaining. I mean, there's show in show business.
Yep.
You know, so you got to have a show to have any
Like,
business.
Who was a great showman that you quoted the
Oh,
first
Mr.
show?
Barnum, P.T. Barnum.
P.T. Barnum.
You know, make it interesting. It doesn't
Well,
have to
that's
be
what a
true. It
circus
just
is
has
all
to be
about.
interesting.
And the last thing I'd ever try to peg onto your show as being a circus. It's not. It's at least it seems to me very, very well organized.
Well, I appreciate that. Thanks, Eagle. Appreciate the well, yeah, I appreciate the thought.
Okay, keep it up, brother.
All right, man. You have a good night.
Thank you.
We're hitting on to a break. We're going to spend the last couple hours talking. We're going to bang on some more skull trivia and maybe some more crystal stuff. And then we'll get back into the history of crystal skulls, because there's a couple sacred cows that need tipping over, and we're going to have to do that. We can't not do that. So get your cups out when your head explodes and carry them home, and we'll get there, and we'll all be better for it, I think. If you disagree with what I say, give me a call, 801-254-1640. I have a Facebook page, Dr. Grimmy's Old Time Medicine Show and Conversation Extravaganza, where I usually announce what I'm going to talk about, a few days in advance, depending on how prepared I am. And you could leave comments and questions if you have an idea for a topic. I'd love to hear about it. K-Talk Media, www.ktalk Media, has an archives. On the archives, I have my shows posted there under my show name. We also put that on SoundCloud under K-Talk Media on SoundCloud, and I have a playlist on SoundCloud. I've been building a YouTube page, but it is a little bit more, it's a little time consuming to connect the audio and video together and then upload it. So it's not coming along as quickly as I would like, but I'm working on it. And at some point, I'm going to build my own webpage to maybe have a little more closer connection to what audience I have, rather than the algorithm-infused Facebook. Okay, so we're at the top of the hour. If you're interested and want to play, give us a call, 801-254-1640. This is the Dr. Grimmy Show. We'll see you on the other side.
Whether it's for weight loss, blood sugar control, or just overall health, millions of people have been helped by low-carb diets, also known as ketogenic diets. But for most people, it's hard to get the right balance of protein and nutrition needed to succeed, especially when on the go. That's why Youngevity created Keto FX bars and shakes. They work together as a low-carb, high-protein team to help you thrive on your low-carb diet. When you grab a Keto FX shake, you get 21 grams of high-quality whey protein with 0 net carbs. Our Keto FX bar gives you 18 grams of protein with only 1 gram of net carbs. And we didn't sacrifice flavor over function. Delicious and filling. Every Keto FX serving also gives you metabolism-enhancing nutrients, plus the essential vitamins and minerals you need to succeed on your low-carb diet. And it's all built on a whole food blend that's crafted from dozens of fruits and vegetables.
Go to ktalkmedia.com and click on Health for more information, or call 888-204-3304.
There are certain things in life that are just going to happen. You are going to get a flat tire on the way to the airport. If you have an important phone call to make, your cell phone battery will be dead. And last but not least, you are going to get older. If you want to age the right way, pick up a copy of the Simply Senior magazine. It has all kinds of information that will make your journey better and offer solutions to those issues that come with getting a little more experienced at life. That's Simply Senior, available at most pharmacies, your community.
You're listening to the all-new K-Talk Media, KBJA 1640 AM, Sandy, Salt Lake, and the entire Wasatch Front, bringing you live local two-way talk.
Cathedral in Washington, D.C., 2 former presidents were among those honoring Senator John McCain, who died a week ago. When McCain's daughter Meghan spoke, her eulogy was interrupted by applause.
The America of John McCain has no need to be made great again because America was always great.
Now, President Trump's daughter and Ivanka and her husband Jared Kushner attended, but the president himself was not invited. Although Trump was not mentioned by name, Meghan McCain's remarks and some of those by former President Obama were clearly critical of the Trump presidency.
It's a politics that pretends to be brave and tough, but in fact is born of fear. John called on us to be bigger than that. He called on us to be better than that.
President Trump spent the day golfing and tweeted about Hillary Clinton and the Russia investigation. Special counsel Robert Mueller has gotten another plea deal in the Russia probe. Correspondent Evan Perez reports yesterday Washington lobbyist Samuel Patton pleaded guilty in federal court to failing to register as a foreign agent.
Prosecutors say that Patton was paid more than $1 million for working with a Ukrainian political party that is aligned with Russia. Now, as part of his plea deal, Patton admits to helping to funnel money from a Ukrainian oligarch to Donald Trump's presidential inaugural committee.
Trump's lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, responds.
It turned out to be this irrelevant indictment where I think Mueller has turned into the private prosecutor. I mean, what does this have to do with President Trump?
There are flood watches and warnings in some parts of the country. Meteorologist Derek Van Dam says Lancaster County, Pennsylvania sure got more than its share of rain yesterday.
There were reports of mobile homes being lifted off of their foundations. There were several swift water rescues that took place.
And some of the heaviest storms tonight are in Iowa and Nebraska. I'm Evan Haining.
Imagining a better bank starts with looking at the savings rates most banks offer and saying, really? Capital One is building something better. You can open a Capital One savings account with one of the nation's best savings rates from anywhere, like here, or here, or here. One of the nation's best savings rates. Opened online, at a Capital One location, or from anywhere. That's banking reimagined. What's in your wallet?
For consumers only. Offered by Capital One N.A. member FDIC. Copyright 2018 Capital One.
The national debt is now over $20 trillion. What happens next? Rising inflation drops in the dollar's value. Some experts say another crash is coming. You can fight this, not with stocks or bonds, but with gold and silver coins in an IRA from Augusta Precious Metals. Call 855-858-5807 and learn how an IRA backed by physical gold and silver can hedge against inflation. Call Augusta Precious Metals right now at 855-858-5807 and get a free gold IRA guide. Call 855-858-5807.
There's an Amber Alert in Phoenix for 2 boys believed to have been taken from the scene of a deadly shooting early this morning. Officials believe the boys, ages 5 and 8, were taken by their biological father, 47-year-old Demas Coronado. The dead woman is the boy's mother. Well, a soon-to-open marijuana museum in Las Vegas will feature the world's largest bong.
The Cannabition Cannabis Museum opening this month will be home to a 24-foot, 800-pound bong named Bongzilla. The museum will be located on Las Vegas's famed Fairmont Street, and the founder of the museum said Bongzilla is hittable and may be used for smoking if Nevada's laws are amended to allow marijuana use in public areas. I'm Mike Cremidas.
A hacker who stole and leaked nude pictures of more than 250 people, George Garofano, has been sentenced to 8 months in prison. Variety reports nude pictures of Jennifer Lawrence, Kate Upton, and Kirsten Dunst are among those he posted. I'm Evan Haining.
Hey there, I'm a glue stick, so I have one job. I glue kid stuff. So sorry for being jealous of Guy.
At Discover, we believe anniversaries should be a time of celebration, not obligation. That's why we think annual fees are ridiculous. And now, just for giving us a try, we're going to give new card members a 1-year anniversary gift they'll never forget. At the end of your first year, we'll match all the cash back you've earned dollar for dollar. No caps and no catches, because we know if you try us, you'll like us. And that's worth every penny. Try it and believe it at discover.com/match. Cashback match offer only for new card members. Limitations apply.
Your car has some impressive technology. Direct fuel injection, GPS navigation, even seat warmers. And at Rain-X, we think your wiper blades should too. While traditional wiper blades can cause streaking from uneven pressure points, Rain-X's contoured blades hug your windshield, maintaining an even pressure distribution from end to end and providing a clean, smooth wipe. Don't settle for less. Pick up a pair of Rain-X blades today. Find Rain-X premium wiper blades at your nearest trusted retailer. Rain-X, outsmart the elements.
Howdy, folks. Colonel Sanders here. Folks keep asking me how KFC can afford to fit 2 pieces of Kentucky Fried Chicken, taters and gravy, a biscuit, a medium drink, and a cookie into my KFC $5 fill-ups and still sell them for just $5. Well, I saved a little money by only paying for 25 seconds of this here 30-second commercial. KFC, it's finger-licking good. At participating KFCs for a limited time. Prices may vary. Tax extra. Extra charge for breast piece and side item substitution may apply.
I met someone. You hear it a lot from people on Match, because more people have met their someone on Match than any other dating app. Everyone wants to find that meaningful connection, and Match is not only #1 in first, but second dates too. Now here's a free offer for our listeners. Go to Match.com/mix for 7 days free. That's 7 days completely free to search, view photos, and connect. This free offer is found at Match.com/mix. That's Match.com/mix. Match.com/mix. .com/mix. 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 .com/mix.